when you ask, hey, Nick, what's the best way for me to get involved in real estate? I want to tell you, stop thinking about real estate for now. You're not ready. Until you have 200 to 300 grand in the bank, commercial real estate is not really an option for you. Big news, guys. I created a free PDF that details my method on how I analyze a self-storage facility and figure out what it's worth. Give me a pen, the back of a napkin, and a couple metrics, and I can figure out about what the property is going to be worth to me. If you want to download this PDF, click in the show notes, the first link, and you can give me your email address, and you get a email right away with a 4-page PDF that outlines exactly how I think about underwriting or giving my initial analysis on a self-storage facility. Again, click the link in the show notes, and you're going to get that document for free. I'm about to tell you something that most of you don't want to hear. People ask me all the time, how do I get started in real estate? How do I get started in real estate? How do I get started in real estate? And my question right back at them is always the same. How much cash do you have? And they're kind of taken back. They're like, what do you mean? I'm interested in real estate. It doesn't matter how much cash I have. Well, it does. And the mistake that I see most people make is that they don't get enough cash. They don't accumulate enough cash before they think about real estate. Because every wealth building journey, if your goal is to build wealth, every wealth building journey happens in phases. Phase 1 is the cash generation. You're generating cash. You're creating cash out of thin air. Phase 2 is the multiplication of cash. It's growing wealth. It's the wealth growth phase. And phase 3, as you get old, is the wealth preservation phase. You have so much of it that growing it is not your concern. You have enough. Taking the risk to grow your wealth is not worth it. You are trying to preserve it. You've got enough. You got all you need to survive, and you need to make sure you don't lose it. Now, my 75-year-old grandfather died with a couple $1,000,000, and he spent his last 15 years, rightfully so, in wealth preservation mode. 6% returns, 5% returns, right in line with the S&P 500, because that's all he needed to do to make the money he needed to live and to pass on a nest egg to his family. Now, I'm in a different phase. I have created my wealth. I used my service business back in 2011 that we started. That generated our income, and now we are growing our wealth. We're in phase 2. I'm using real estate as a vehicle to turn my money into more money. And there's a step process there, right? Turn your money into more money. That's a process. The problem is that people use real estate as a wealth creation tool when it's not. In my mind, there are way better ways to generate wealth, to create wealth. Real estate is very good at growing wealth, taking $1 million and turning it into $5 million, taking $5 million and turning it into $20 million. Real estate's really good at that. Real estate is not very good from going to 0 to 1. And you'll have people disagree. You'll have people disagree with me. But I'll tell you that all of the, aside from one, I know one, Chris Powers, a couple episodes ago, he got started in real estate. Well-networked guy, but he started with his sweat equity and built it through real estate. But he did know some wealthy people that could invest with him. He had a couple people early in his career that could invest. So did I. None of us are self-made, obviously. But I'll tell you that most of the real estate entrepreneurs who have been successful started another way as entrepreneurs. So my journey has been since 2011. I was a middle-class kid with, a net worth of 20 grand that I'd made mowing lawns. My family, middle class as well, under $1 million net worth as a family. I didn't grow up in the country club. I didn't know a ton of wealthy people. I had to find a way to generate cash somehow. That was my business, my Sway startup, my storage squad, student storage business that my partner and I ran. That business put cash in our pockets. It put cash in our pockets and it taught us how to run a business, those two things. Then when we were 26, we were in a position to put up our own cash to go into a big real estate deal. We put $500,000 of our own cash up and we got into a $2.9 million real estate deal. You know my story. If I wouldn't have done that, if I would have started with $100,000 and put it into a $500,000 project, I'd probably have at this point right now maybe a net worth of $400,000 to $500,000. I would have been able to turn that $100,000 over the course of 5 years. I would have been able to 5x it. But guess what? When you start with more, when you start with a lot more, when you start with $500,000 instead, and actually we had some on the sidelines as well, your snowball gets rolling a lot quicker. So is real estate the best way to generate wealth? No, it's not. So when people ask me, Nick, what's the best way to get started? What's the best way to get started? I'm like, okay, well, you're not ready for real estate. You don't have the cash to get ready for real estate. And this might be pissing you off right now. If you're listening to this and you might be saying, Nick, you're wrong. And yeah, I might be wrong. There might be many, many ways that you can do a deal with no money, especially if your family has it or somebody who can invest in you has cash. Disregard what I'm saying. If you know somebody with $3 or $4 million, if you have a parent or grandparent who can get you into your first commercial real estate deal, you're ready. You're ready to go. But if you don't know anybody with cash, if you don't know anybody who would trust you, you don't have any of your own cash, real estate's not the best way. It's just simply not the best way. What's the best way? Turn off this podcast, turn off the Nick Huber Show, and go to the Sweaty Startup. Go to the small business entrepreneurship podcast that I have and the website that I have that is all about wealth creation. 0 to 1. Going from 0 to 1, going from nothing to something, trading your time for money, then building a business, and then getting it to a point where it's generating $200,000 to $500,000 a year in profit for you. You do that for a couple of years while you spend 50 or 100 grand, and guess what? Come back and see me because you got the cash to get into real estate. That's where so many people go wrong. It's like my friend who's an investor, calls himself an investor, but he works a full-time job for 40 grand a year, and he spends 10 to 20 hours a week reading through quarterly reports of public companies, researching cryptocurrencies, and studying real estate and looking for his first deal. He's been looking for his first deal for 5 years. He's not doing the things that generate the wealth. He loves being an investor, and he'll spend 20 hours researching how to invest his $200 that week. What I don't understand is why he's wasting that time growing what is a small amount of cash. I mean, people can argue with me and say, okay, yeah, he's learning lessons that are going to serve him for years. And of course, I'm not saying he's wasting his time at all, but his time would be better spent trading it for money. I mean, hell, 20 hours at McDonald's gets you $300. Guy's spending 20 hours figuring out how to invest $200. The opportunity cost of the time is huge. So if you're early on in your journey and you don't have any cash, think about getting some cash. Because I was able to make it in the real estate world. I was able to get my snowball rolling. I was able to get on the way to generating, on paper, liquidity, maybe a couple $1 million right now to myself, but on paper, $10 million plus. 3 years ago, it was $1 million plus, right? It's growing very, very fast. Why is it growing so fast? Because I had other means of generating cash. I had some of my own cash to bring to a deal. Another thing is that cash talks. If you have no cash and you need it from somebody else, you have no leverage. We had some leverage in the very first deal that we put together because we brought a third of the cash ourselves. We brought 1/3 of the cash, 33% of it ourselves. We were able to personal guarantee the loan ourselves because we had some income, we had some cash on our balance statement to show the bank. We were able to get the loan for that big commercial real estate with us being the only ones who had to personally guarantee the loan. That's worth something too. Money talks when it comes to real estate. If you have none, you need to have options. So take this for what it's worth, but I'll tell you that there are much better ways to go from 0 to 1. There are much better ways to generate wealth than real estate. Most people that I know in the real estate business started in the small business space. They started with entrepreneurship. They started with small business that generated them cash. You look at the great real estate families of New York City, of LA, of Chicago, or just anywhere in our country where you see these real estate families that have built massive amounts of wealth. They almost never got started in real estate. They always had something else going on that generated a bunch of cash for them. And real estate was something they did with their cash once they had it. So if you're going to take one thing away from this episode, it's that real estate is not the best way to go from 0 to 1. Real estate is not the best way to make something out of nothing. Real estate is not the best way to get sweat equity because sweat equity is not worth a whole lot in this deal. The Nick Huber Show is sponsored by Juniper Square. And if you raise money for your real estate deals from outside investors, Juniper Square can help you manage the entire process. No more emails, spreadsheets, or scrambling to complete a raise a few days before closing. Investors can commit to your deal, fund your deal, and you can share updates, documents, and even send distributions right from the software. It's as efficient as it gets. I use Juniper Square to manage all of my deals, and it's an incredibly easy way to invite investors to the deal room, raise the money, and stay organized with deal docs and communication. And the best part, it makes me look insanely professional in the eyes of all of my investors. Visit junipersquare.com to learn more. Before you go, we have a new sponsor of the show, recostseg.com. And if you bought a piece of real estate, you need to get a cost segregation study done. It's what allows you to get all that sweet, sweet bonus depreciation, and it's how real estate investors like me and many others pay almost nothing in taxes on an annual basis. You can cost seg a single-family rental, a short-term rental, or a large commercial property. recostseg.com is affordable and aggressive and super fast to turn them around. They've done 10 plus cost segs for me this year. They're going to do many more for me. Visit recostseg.com to learn more.